right, greetings and salutations. I got nothing going on. The reason for I'm even hitting the red button, is it a red button? Yeah, it's kind of a pinkish button on here. The reason I'm hitting the pink, red, go button today is because I'm going to be out of pocket the rest of the week. I am traveling to Texas tomorrow. I'll be there for a couple days, and then I am driving back from Texas with stuff that I had in storage there, which has just been there too long, and I need to kind of get it out of there. So I'm getting it out of there. So I'm going to be on the road probably starting Thursday, and I'm guessing I'll be back in the Northeast, assuming I don't get kidnapped in the Ozarks or something by Sunday. And then after that, I'm going to Mexico sometime next week. Sometime, an undated, unknown secret aircraft will be carrying me to Mexico, where I'll be scuba diving. So doing a really annoying but had to be done trip, followed by a really fun, exciting trip. Haven't gone scuba diving in about 6 years, it turns out, which is just crazy because I really love scuba. My wife and I, we both really love it. But, you know, having a daughter has sort of put a little bit of a cramp in our style. And you start focusing on family vacations, obviously. And she's not quite old enough. I'm not sure what the oldest time date you can scuba. Oldest age, 80 cell, thanks. I'm not sure when the date you can start, but I want to say it's like 11, 12, 13. Maybe it's a little bit younger. I'm sure it might vary by state, organization, whatnot. In any case, I feel like she's kind of still on the younger side. She loves to swim, though, and she is not afraid of deep water. So it's potential we could get her in there, and then maybe we could do family trips. But to me and to my wife too, we see scuba as being very safe, but still there's always that piece of caution of not wanting to have everybody at risk all the time, which is another reason why I think we waited now that she's at least a little bit older to scuba. But that's exciting. And Cozumel, we've been there once before to scuba dive, and it is an amazing spot to scuba. Really, really pretty waters. I may do some kind of on the road travelogue, little videos or shorts or things. I don't know. I was kind of into the shorts for a while, but I haven't really had anything to short talk about. Maybe I'll have more at some point. Who knows? But it'll be a lot of driving and then crashing in the cheapest place I can find along the roadways and then back on the road. So I'm expect to be zonked by the time I get back up here. Hope everyone had a great weekend, by the way. One thing I did do, and I guess I'll talk about it now. Maybe I'll make a standalone video of it. I don't know, but I watched and read. We really watched some stuff about Daggerheart, the Critical Role fantasy game. So we looked at Candela Obscura on the channel. You can check out the read through of that. And I think I mentioned I was always forgetting what was their fantasy one called, and what was that going to be like. Well, apparently at Gen Con, and I wasn't at Gen Con, but at Gen Con they were running demos. I don't know if for everybody and anybody, or I'm guessing it probably wasn't. I don't know. I haven't people who I've not talked personally to, but just things I've read, didn't get into if it was behind closed doors or whoever. I think at least some of it was more for, I guess, more famous people, industry folks, but they did have some playtesting or demos, I guess is probably a better word, of Daggerheart, and it seemed pretty darn interesting. I don't know that I'm gonna, there's Bullock says, I enjoy nothing. Nothing is also good. There's the interesting thing here, right? I don't consider myself a single system person, but I also acknowledge that, say, for my home game, for the most part, I play the system that I like, which is kind of my homebrewed BX system. And if you're wondering why you haven't heard about my home game for a stretch, it's because we're on kind of a pregnancy/summer hiatus. So we've been off, and hopefully that will come back not that far away. Hopefully people will get their acts together in September, and we'll get back to it. I'm not someone who's looking for a new system. I like to, obviously, if you've followed this channel at all, I'd like to dabble in the systems and see what's cooking and appreciate that. But I'm not looking to get a new system. And the same thing with settings. Like Dolmenwood, I'm probably not going to back, not because it doesn't look amazing, but just because I don't think I'm going to use it. And if I'm not going to use it, do I need to spend a bunch of money on some books, which will be nice, but in the end, they'll just be sitting there. And I don't know that I mean, he doesn't, obviously, this is not something where this is somebody small and it's like, hey, my contribution could make the difference between a funded Kickstarter and a failure. No, they're blowing the doors off of Kickstarter. So he doesn't need me. And I don't think I'm going to run it. So what am I going to do with those books? I don't know. So I'm not going to back it. Same thing with this Critical Role game, Daggerheart. And I guess I can share my screen because I pulled up comicbook.com has some pictures and things. Hold on a sec. Bullet Catcher says that their single system, they don't have much time to learn other systems, so they stick with what is familiar, not interested in new Critical Role systems, 60, etc. Torn on Dolmenwood, it's a different game. Yeah, I mean, I think Dolmenwood's probably going to be pretty similar to BX, but yes, I'm sure they're going to, or OSE/BX, I'm sure they're going to put some things on it. I think for Dolmenwood, it's really, are you interested in that setting? Which a lot of people love the setting, and I'm going to be putting out some setting stuff of my own. So look, all too for buying settings. It's just that for that reason, on top of the fact that I just never find myself as enthused to really run somebody else's setting into my same thing with adventures. You know, I love reading adventures, but I don't know that I've read an adventure guy. Ooh, I need to run this. Maybe steal something from it, put it in. But I always just find myself running my own things, and especially for the kind of prep or lack thereof that I do, it's much easier to keep in mind what I have said for my, or what I have established for myself, because I kind of know it. It's in my brain, as opposed to I'm trying to learn it from the paper, whatever papers. But there was some cool stuff, and I don't know how much of this, I'm just going to zoom in. This is from comicbook.com, who was on some kind of, whoops. Maybe I can just open this in a new, something like that. This is just the character sheet. A couple of neat things that they're doing, and I'm genuinely curious about how that's going to turn. Because some of it I think like, ooh, this has promise. Some of it still feels like it's in a bit too crunchier than I tend to want these days. But I get that too, because I think they're looking for not 5e, but can we get in that sort of sweet spot that people are comfortable with the amount of crunch in something like 5e, not go too far over, but maybe not go too far under either, because I think a lot of times, rightfully or wrongfully, people equate kind of crunchiness with their ability to customize and get the things they want. So a lot of folks, I think a lot of people would embrace more OSR games if OSR games had some more of that crunch. Maybe, I mean, I guess that's really what Shadow Dark is. And Shadow Dark also blew the hinges off of Kickstarter. And I think it was kind of promising that, well, hey, you can have some of the customization stuff that the kind of, some folks, I don't want to say kind of grognardy folks, because it's not just them, will just be like, hey, you only need two classes and 3 species, and that's all you're going to get. And, you know, look, people want their half tiefling, half whatever, warlock, ranger, druid combos, and hey, that's what they want. You know, give the people what they want. And I think this is going in for this similar sort of aesthetic. See here, some kind of cat person race, which will be very popular. They've got sort of or I guess kind of species, and then you've got different things down here going on. JD Sull says, yet the effective crunch on speed of play never gets addressed. Well, this is very true. This is what I think, and it's also the thing doesn't get addressed with VTTs. I don't know why VTTs either don't talk about this more, as my chair is slowly sinking beneath me. Either, hey, how we speed up play. Like, that's never something you see. I just got to fix my chair. I don't feel like VTTs promote enough how they speed up play. Maybe because, not that they don't, but there's that give and take between how much that doing a lot of mechanics maybe behind the scenes could speed things up, matched up with some of the other things that slow you down. Maybe not in game, but certainly in prep, having to prep maps with line of sight for fog and all this stuff, that maybe it ends up being a wash. But I always felt like VTTs should really be in the business of trying to hide as much of the crunch as possible. Even to the point of you could make a case. I mean, I suppose you could anyway, of playing the VTT without the VTT. I would love to, and maybe I should just make a Fantasy Grounds, I don't know, basic account if possible. I'd love to see if I could just play, or even just to kind of demo first edition AD&D with everything turned on, assuming that something like Fantasy Grounds or Roll20 or whatever could have all that stuff running behind the scenes. And so we just get into combat and all that stuff, weapon speed, segments, blah, 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 blue, 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 would just all be just back there. And you could just roll a die and you could, but all the inner workings would be running behind the scenes. I maybe it does. I don't know. And this is Pink Lemonade Spindrift for the working man. In any case, so a couple things I saw from Daggerheart. Keeping in mind, you're getting it from me. So that's our third hand, I guess, because I'm second hand. So I listened to some observations from folks who played. That's first hand. That now I'm second hand. So you're getting it. Are you second hand? I don't know. Whatever. You're getting it. You're getting it. You're getting it from me, and I haven't played it, and I haven't even read it. But there are a couple of things that are sort of interesting, and I thought had some real promise, but not in the form like the way I'm looking at it, like, oh man, this would be interesting if I could take a version of this and kind of graft it into OSR type game or NSR type game, as opposed to actually running Daggerheart. But maybe they'll come around on me. But the first thing, if you haven't heard, it's a D12 system, actually a 2D12 system. And those 2D12s are color coded, and they have one color is to represent hope and the other one's to represent fear. And then apparently what you do is you roll these dice and you add them up to get your final whatever. So you have a 2 to 24 spread with a little hump in the middle. But then on top of it, whichever of those two dice was higher tells you something about the result. If hope is higher, it seems to be kind of a yes and type thing. So a little bit, not a critical necessarily, because the critical does exist, which I'll get into, but just sort of a little bit extra. Whereas if fear is the top number, then it's kind of a yes, but. And then you could just have failures. And I guess you could probably have failures. And I haven't seen examples, so I don't know, but that probably works for both failures and success. So you can have a yes and, which means a little bit better than normal success. Yes, but a little bit weaker than normal success. And you could probably have no but, which is a failure, but maybe there's a little glimmer of hope in there, to no and, which is your failure's kind of worse. Maybe not critical fail bad, but worse, or maybe that would be calling your critical fail. And then you do have a critical, I think it's just a critical success, which is both numbers come up the same. So if you get no matter what it is, 1 and 1, 2 and 2, all the way up to 12 and 12, they're both come up the same, you get a crit. And apparently there are hope points, I guess, but I haven't heard too much about hope points, so I don't know quite how that figures in, but there are hope points. I don't know if there are also fear points. I don't know how symmetrical this hope and fear thing is, but I thought that I think that's pretty neat. So you get that kind of powered by the apocalypse-ish sort of thing. As one of the videos I watched pointed out, you basically get five different results in there. 5 different, right? So you have crit, yes, and, yes, but, no and, no but. Notice there's no straight yes or no. There's always a little bit something extra. But I don't know if the yes and is really just pocketing a hope point or having to take a fear point. I'm not sure. Haven't seen enough detail. But that to me I thought was really intriguing. And of course, the first thing I started thinking about was in BX and similar systems, you have law and chaos. Why don't you have 2 dice and have one of them be law and one of them be chaos? And then depending on which one comes up, if you're doing like a 2d6 check, what does that mean? If you have a little bit of a law plus result, a little bit of chaos plus result. But then I thought, well, what if you're doing kind of a 1 in 6 roll, like a lot of skill checks, in BX and similar, or X and 6 chances? What if you rolled 2d6? One of them is law and one of them is chaos, and then you could choose which one you want. And then you could have some interesting things. If your alignment is chaos, then maybe choosing the chaos result gives you a little something, something. Whereas choosing the lawful one maybe is not so good, or it actually might harm you in some small way, which gives you some intriguing things. So you roll, you want to get, let's just say we're going high dice, right? So we have a 1 in 6 chance of doing something, and we're assuming it's on the 6. Okay. So you roll the 2 dice, you're a chaos aligned rogue, whatever, thief, and you roll a 4 on your chaos die and you roll a 6 on your law die. But maybe if you take that law result, which will allow you to sneak, there's some side effect because you're kind of going against, it's almost like the sense that we always talk about, the sort of abstract conflict between law and order. But this is a really way of kind of mechanizing it. These two forces are constantly pulling on each other and pulling on you as you're part of it. And then if you go with yours, maybe you go get something, you go the other way, you have to maybe suffer something. But what if you really needed to sneak? You really needed that hide in shadows roll or whatever it was. So you go, I'm going to take law, even though I'm chaos. And maybe that means I start to slip towards the law alignment side. Maybe it means I take a little, I don't know if damage would be right or whatever it would be, some kind of disadvantage because I went with law. Or I could go with chaos and maybe I even get a little something extra, but I did fail. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. I kind of dig it. And I was thinking to myself, I like my version a little bit more than just hope and fear. Though, hope and fear are good, I think, when you're probably, because they're not going to have alignments. Whoops, I haven't set my monitor to stay awake. Not a lot of alignment stuff going on. So I think maybe that would be a neat way of doing it, because I do like the concept of, sorry, I'm just going to turn that on so that I don't go to sleep anymore. That concept of picking and choosing. But whereas in the Critical Role one, it seems like you don't have as much choice. The fear, you're going to roll and either going to have fear or hope. Whereas I kind of like having that choice. I kind of like allowing the players to say, hey, I'm going to fail because I want to stick with law. And maybe I can turn that into something. Maybe I can get a law point. Let's just say you have law points and chaos points. Maybe I can get a law point and do something with it down the line. So even though I fail, I'll get a law point. And if I take the chaos side, and let's say I'm lawful, I could take the chaos side and maybe I can help me, but I'm going to have to take that chaos point. So that would be, I felt that was kind of neat. So that was kind of one takeaway, and I'll probably write or do something else on it because I think it's an intriguing idea that could be really interesting. You could even do it with D20s. You could have your D20 roll 2 and choose whether you want the law or the chaos one. Hey, Brother Malachi says, a stream about nothing. Is this a Seinfeld campaign? I wish. I think I mentioned this is pink lemonade spinner for the working man, of which I don't have too much. So from this Daggerheart, this concept of rolling 2d12s and having fear and hope, I like a lot, but I'm already thinking about how I can change it. The other thing I saw, hey, Krister, the other thing I saw that seemed really interesting, I'll try to zoom in. I don't know how pixelated it's going to get. We'll just do that. If you can see. Okay, if we're looking up here, this I thought was pretty slick. I don't know. They're play testing, and I'm sure they have ideas. I don't know if it ends up being clunkier in play or not, or what. So there are a couple things. One, you have stress. I think I mentioned in the stream when I watched Matt Colville's, what was it? Whatever that his, not Flea Mortals, but whichever his one about his, I watched his live stream, the recording of his live stream about his lair supplement. And he was playing a custom class. He didn't call it stress. They called it something else, but essentially kind of a stress mechanic. So here we can see they have a stress mechanic also. And I don't know exactly how that works, but it's there. And I think some things will give you damage on stress before you start. You can see here damage on hit points. The neat part to me, well, stress is kind of cool. Depending on how they use it. So you notice here, you don't have a lot of hit points. This class, I don't even know if hit points goes up over the course of the game. Maybe it does. These look like they're maybe dotted or dashed, and you could make it you could, put your pen over it and make it a full extra hit point cube. But even then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, so this probably mean that I don't know how many levels this thing goes up, but probably 12 is your max, which you're going, whoa, 12, that's it. maybe, but you can only lose hit points at their 3 levels. So it gets a little bit tricky here, and this is how I'm wondering how it's going to work, and if it's going to get kind of clunky. But you have these 3 levels, and I forget what these are. This is severe. I can't read. What is this? Minor, major. Maybe it's minor, major, severe. And each of these, you can see here in the boxes, each of these has a number that is a threshold. So what happens is this. You have a giant. The giant comes in, hits you with a club. I don't know where they have some kind of armor class thing, I believe. So whatever. Okay, I've been hit. All right. So the giant swings its massive club and rolls 20 damage. And you're going, I've got 6 damage. I'm dead. But that's not how it works. 20 damage. You then go and you look at these numbers here in these boxes. And if this one looks like, if you can see here, I think it's really light. But if maybe you can look at that. It's I believe that minor is 4, major is 9, and severe is 14. So you would go and say, okay, you did 20 points of damage. That's more than minor, more than major. Okay, it's into severe. Boom. So then I think it's just 3. So I would lose 3 hit points. I wouldn't lose 20. So what are they trying to do? What are they trying to achieve with this? And this is where I think it's kind of clever, though. Is the juice worth the squeeze in terms of having extra steps and extra kind of things? I'm not sure. Obviously, they think so. But what are they trying to do? Well, you have creatures that are huge or just sturdy, I guess, that can take a lot of damage. And normally that translates into some sort of hit point bloat. Of course, damage bloat on the other side of it. So what they're doing is they're saying, okay, you may be rolling massive amounts of dice for damage, but we're not going to have to give you hundreds of hit points and do lots of math. We're going to basically save a step by just saying we're going to take that whatever number we roll that sort of raw damage die, then we're going to funnel it through these buckets of minor, major, severe wounds, and then whichever bucket it falls into then determines a flat rate of a flat cost in hit points. So what does that mean? Well, it means you can have things do big amounts of damage, but you don't have to track big amounts of hit points. I could have the giant defensively. Maybe it's instead of having 4, 9, and 14 as its ratings, maybe it's got 10, 20, 30 or so. So you got to figure out, oh my gosh, how are we going to we want to really hit this giant hard. We need to figure out how to get over 30. And assuming that over time you kind of decide. But the point is okay, you instead of having to have a bunch of hit point bloat, that giant can just have 10 hit points. But these threshold numbers can be the ones that go up and down. Maybe everything could have really low numbers of hit points, just they have different thresholds. It also means that potentially you could easily have spells, I imagine, at least how I'm thinking about that, bypass those thresholds. What if Finger of Death, for example, just does straight roll 2d6, and that's how many hit points you lose directly. Boom. Instead of having to have some massive amount of, this guy's 10d6 or whatever, you can say, no, it's just going to take off. Or you even say, like, if you have less than 4 hit points remaining, you're toast, whatever it is. So it seems kind of cool. How that translates over playing, I assume you get used to it, just doing it. But it means that you can really keep your numbers, the hit point numbers down. And then these, I think, are clearly, these numbers and these thresholds are ones that could rise up through levels. Maybe you have feats. Hey, raise your minor threshold by 2 or something. Do that. And I think, and everything here in terms of what I'm actually saying about this game, take it with big grains of salt, because again, it's like third-hand information. But I want to say if it doesn't crack minor, I think that just goes to stress. I think there's something to do with stress will fill up first before you start taking hit points damage, but that might just be for minor. I don't recall, so don't hold me to that precisely. But again, it's another neat idea. It's, you're trying to think about, well, how do I simulate, or how do I want to mechanize things that hit hard, things that require a lot of hits, but then I decide I don't want to track tons of hit points. I don't want to have hit point bloat. I mean, are you getting rid of hit point bloat or setting? I don't know if maybe because obviously there's going to be some mathematics behind these numbers, I presume. We have no idea how much damage things tend to do, how easy it will be at different levels to get or different things to get over, say, if that is 14, get over 14 to get that severe. We don't know, but it does allow you to have kind of really interesting creatures. Maybe you have something that's got 1 hit point, but really high thresholds. Well, this thing, I don't know what it would be, has got 10 for minor, 20 for major, 40 for severe, but it's just got 1 or whatever. Maybe it's always 10, 40, 40. I don't know. Like it just, or it's like everything's just 40, but it's got 1 hit point, meaning it's really hard to do a lot of damage to, but if you do, you're going to kill it. And of course, if my idea, what I'm remembering, I think is correct about it. If you don't get minor, you do stress, you can still chip away at it. But if you can just nail it once really good, you'll kill it. So it's got some neat stuff. Now, there's still obviously the potential for things like damage bloat, presumably, but these numbers are all the bottom end. So you just have to reach the threshold. You just got to get 14 or more. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to try to maximize everything, try to get, hundreds, because all you need to do is reach this, whatever this number is, you just got to hit there. So you don't need to what's this person's thing called, this Qatari character, 50, hitting it for 50 damage and hitting it for 20 damage is all the same. So it allows you to sort of skip or maybe de-emphasizes some min-maxy tendencies you might have, because I mean, sure, you want to be able to hit those thresholds, so it's not entirely gone, but you're not necessarily needing to. There might be other considerations you now want to work in, because you're like, well, I'm doing 10d6 or something already, so maybe I can just leave it there and not try to min-max it even more, but try to work on some other aspect of it that will help me just as much. So I thought that was pretty cool. I'm trying to think if there's anything else from here that I thought was super interesting. They kept the 6 attributes. They don't call it dex. It's called agility. And precision is what? Knowledge, I guess, is intelligence, presence, charisma, intuition, wisdom. I'm not sure what precision. Maybe strength is actually con and precision is strength. I'm not sure. Max Muster says, looks like an AC plus damage roll combined. Maybe. Yeah. But there is still an AC. So there is still some. Let's see if we can find it on the sheet. I don't know if it is on here. Can we find it? Is there? It's not it's not the best picture. So we have armor. Oh, I think the thing with armor, and here's something I'm not sure. So if I remember correctly, armor has, let me see what it was. Armor has slots, I think, or absorbs damage, but then has a number of charges. So, for example, their armor, it's light armor. It has maybe 1 charge of 3. So it'll absorb 3 or up to 3. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but basically is your armor, and I hope it's not going to follow Zelda and break all the time. No worries, Max Muster. I hope it's not in Zelda, because someone said, oh, it has, your armor absorbs damage, like it has damage reduction, but it has a discrete number of charges, and once it's used up the charges, it's done. Broken. I don't know if they mean broken for that combat, like, oh, you've used up your armor is depleted till the end of combat, or if it's literally broken. I think that says base score, but I don't know. Can we zoom in? I don't know. You may know as much or more not. Whoops. Because I'm merely remembering what some folks have said, but even they might have been misremembering. I think that says base score as opposed to raise score. These are not my images, so that's all. And Who knows if they were even meant to take images? So I don't know. Oh, you know, and I might be covering it up. Am I covering it with a massive head circle here? Let me see if I can. So I think that's base score. Base score is 3, and it may be 1 charge. It does have a feature which is +2 to agility, which is kind of nice. So I think maybe what happens is it'll take up to 3 once. I don't know, or it has 3 charges of 1 each. I'm not sure. I feel like light armor, given that 3 is the heaviest thing, maybe it'll take minor things 3 times or 1. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have anything to compare it to. I don't think that article has any more images attached, just lots of ads. So no, that's all we got. Let me see if they say here. Okay, so a couple things here. When they're rolling damage dice, I guess they're using ascending dice for damage. So it could be D6 to multiple D20s. If the result of the damage dice roll is below a player's first damage threshold number, they take a point of stress. And then if it's between the first and the second, they take 1 point of hit points. Between the second and third, 2 points, and then 3 points above. So here we go. Each player also has an armor score and 3 armor slots or resources. When they take damage, they can reduce the damage roll by the number of their armor score. So if a creature rolls a 15 on a damage roll, a player with an armor score of 5 can reduce that damage roll to a 10, potentially turning a severe damage into a major damage, but at the cost of one of their armor resources. And armor can be repaired as a short rest activity. Okay, so we kind of had it right. So those scores actually apply to the raw number. So you're rolling D6s from a D6 potentially up to multiple D20s. And you roll, so I don't know, did we decide this is a 14 and this is 3? So imagine that boom, 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 boom. Hey, I rolled a 14 for damage. And then this Qatari person goes, aha, aha, I use armor, my light armor. Now that 14 goes down to 11, so I go from taking 3 hit points of damage down to taking 2 hit points of damage, which could be a big deal, but I only have 1 charge. I'm guessing that's what that is, 1 charge. So my 1 charge is toast, and that armor is kaput until we take a short rest and I can repair it. So kind of cool. I'm not huge on the repair. I would rather it just be like that's all you get and it just comes back next. Because I could just foresee the wanting to rest after every combat. And I don't know how long a short rest is. So maybe it's just 10 minutes, which would be equivalent to kind of a post-combat breather, which would be okay. But if it's longer than that, I feel like you're going to end up in this situation in which the party starts to slow down because you're going to want to repair after each one, repair kind of thing. I mean, I would almost just maybe I haven't even played this yet, and I'm already thinking if I was playing it, maybe I would just house rule that if you make it through combat, depending on how long the rest is, if you make it through combat, then your armor, it's kind of like you've just your armor's done everything it can do, but the next combat it's back. I'm just not a fan of the repair stuff. Though some people are. Some people are probably gonna love that. I hate it in the Zelda games. I can't stand it. Everything breaks, seeming to break all the time. I find it highly frustrating in Zelda, and I don't think I would like it in a game, especially if it's just you have 1 slot. I got 1 slot, and I did that, and then suddenly, I mean, granted, I can decide not to. I don't have to do it. So you do have a choice there, right? So you can kind of hold your armor for when you think you're really going to need it. So maybe this Qatari person, they're picking up minor wounds. They're not going to bother. Maybe they pick up between a minor and major. Maybe not. And then they get whammed, and that's when they then use there. So there is a little bit of intrigue. Max Buster says, not sure how I feel about the I use my armor part. For me, armor, except for shield, is kind of passive. Yes, and that does insert a little bit of gaminess in there. I like that there's a decision point, and you may want to hold on to it. So that part I do appreciate. But yes, I kind of armor is sort of that. It's your old trusty standby thing. When all else has failed, you have your armor and shield to protect you. And this is kind of like, maybe you do. Maybe you do. So yeah, so you have to choose, and then you just get a minimum. You just get a limited. It's another limited resource. Now, maybe on the positive side of that, it's certainly going to quicken up combats because you have a limited number of hit points. Again, I can't judge these minor, major, severe injuries in terms of the hit points. I don't know what damage does, but you're going from D6s, maybe at the low end, to multiple D20s. I don't know. I guess it depends. I don't know what. I still don't know what does a goblin do? How much damage does your first level opponents do? I don't know. And I don't know what level these guys are supposed to be at. So I don't know if 4, 9, and 14 is early game, mid game. Maybe they gave him kind of a mid game sort of thing. I'm not sure. So I don't know. But we'd have to see about that. But yeah, I'm with you in that I kind of like armor, just that thing that you have. Because if you're a fighter, or maybe they don't have fighters too. Maybe they don't have, who knows even what a vanilla fighter looks like, but some of it does lessen your defensive, though they may have really high thresholds. You always need to see more. But yeah, I tend to think, yes, I would rather have it just be a flat, this thing that I have, I invested in, and it's good, than a consumable, essentially. A consumable, easy to recharge outside of combat, but still a consumable. But yeah. No, Soren says, yeah, I agree about that. Armor wear would be nice to include, but it is tricky. Yes, it is tricky. And I just don't find it, for me, I just don't find it worth it. I don't like in Zelda. I don't find it worthwhile. I get it that you can carry around a bunch of stuff and you have inventory issues. So a way to kind of have you churn through your inventory. So because you're making stuff. But I'd rather they give me different things to make than force me to keep remaking swords over and over again because they break after 5 hits or whatever it is. It always seems to be like a crazy low number, and it always seems to happen when I'm least prepared for it. Yeah, I just don't dig it. And in the same way, gives you 3, but it only happens once. So that light armor, it's almost like a shields will be splintered kind of deal right there. And then you just have to rest to get it back. And, depending on how rests work, we'll see if that's onerous or not. Oh, we got the smoke alarm going off. Not to be feared, though, my wife is cooking, and in our apartment, we don't have good kitchen ventilation. So smoke just pools along the ceiling until it hits our smoke alarm. Max Mustard says, it's nice, get out of jail free card before going down. At the end of the day, it's a game. Yes. Though I think the thing to be aware of, though, is it is, but it's limited. Because let's say you're down in your last couple hit points and you take this severe shot, you're going down. You have 14. So it only gives you a buffer to 17. So if something hits you for more than 17, your armor doesn't help you. So it's kind of like a good get out of jail free card with a bit of an asterisk, because it isn't going to absolutely save you. Because if you just do, and maybe that's a reason to min-max and do just max damage so you can overcome any potential armor. I think the thing is that it's another tracking thing. I have to track it. And I don't mind tracking stuff, but I want to be sure, it's kind of like I want to track it because I feel like it's important. And for me, in the kind of the games I run and blah, 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 do I find where something important enough that I want to track it and then do things with it? No. I'd rather track other things. But I do like the idea of the sort of the 2 dice with fear and hope. These are nice character sheets, though. And I think these are cards that they're just sitting on top. You can kind of see some shadowing. So you have, it looks like a couple of pieces of paper. And then I guess you stick these on there. Or I don't know if you're supposed to attach them. But then you get, and these might have been just for, I don't know if these were just for the show or for these demos or whether you're going to have these. Are you expected to stick these on with tape or something? I don't know. Are they going to become? I think these are your customization options. But it's nice. You get some little background stuff. You get some inventory stuff. You have some character description stuff, and you can circle things. It seems like it's a nice sheet. I have a feeling this is going down, kind of trying to find that sweet spot between story play and 5e style D&D. I think Critical Role leans into that anyway. And I think having multiple levels of success and failure, and even just the imagery of having a sort of a hope and fear interjecting is great hooks for the folks who really want to get into kind of the story gamey role playing part of it. Who want to really absorb this. Well, what does it look like if you did this thing but with fear? Or what does it look like if you achieved it with hope? What do these things look like? And I think that for folks who really get into that, this just gives them more hooks they can grab onto. And for GMs as well, if they really get into that also, it's evocative. What does it look like? You did this, but you had to rely on it's fear, or it's some kind of catastrophe moment when something you make some grand victory and you achieve it with hope. Good stuff. Again, I'm intrigued. I don't think there's no one, as far as I know, I've seen anything that says where this thing is as far in terms of its development cycle. Some folks are saying they felt like it's a bit behind Candela Obscura, so maybe we'll be waiting a little bit while longer before we get to it. This picture you're looking at, not mine. I got it from this article here at comicbook.com. This is a picture of the character sheet, or sheets, I should say, for Daggerheart, the new Critical Role, one of the, I guess, a couple of new Critical Role RPG, tabletop RPG products. And we were just going through some of the interesting elements. I wasn't at Gen Con. Apparently, some folks got to demo this at Gen Con. I wasn't at Gen Con, but I've just been listening and kind of watching some of the commentary about it. And I thought there were a couple things in here that were pretty cool. I think the thing I like the best is the hope and fear dice. And I'll just reset it. Apologies, I said this earlier, but I know some folks have joined and didn't get to hear. But basically, this system uses a 2d12. 2d12 is their core die rolling mechanic. But the dice are color-coded, or however else you want to change them apart. You basically have two, and they need to be kept distinct. One represents hope, one represents fear. You roll them up, and depending on which die is higher, that sets the theme of the success or failure. So you can either succeed with hope, or you can succeed with fear, or you could fail with hope, or you could fail with fear. And then if both come up the same number, then it's a critical success. And I mentioned that I like this a lot, but not necessarily in the way they're doing it. So the way they're doing it is you roll the dice, and whichever number comes up higher, you take. I thought it'd be really cool to have those two dice, but you maybe use D6s, or you could use D20s, and one is chaos and one is law. And then as a player, instead of adding them together, you get to choose either or. I can choose the chaos side, or I can choose the law side. And then I thought you could have some neat stuff with, depending on which alignment you are, you could have drawbacks or potential extra success or extra perks if you choose the side that matches you. If you choose the side that is antagonistic to your alignment, then it's the reverse. So if you're lawful and you choose the law die, then it's kind of like you're getting bolstered. You're bolstering law, or law is bolstering you. Whereas if you take chaos, there's going to be some negative consequence because you are lawful. And of course, if you're chaos, then taking chaos would bolster you up. Taking law would give you a negative consequence. I think that's really kind of cool. But they are using that. And then they have some other stuff, stress. And we were just going through talking about these kind of hit point thresholds and damage and all. Because look, there's going to be a lot more information. I just thought those things were neat, having just heard them. And because I had really nothing to talk about, and it occurred to me to pull it up, I did. But certainly don't take my word for it. go search out some of the videos and things online because they've got better information from people who actually played the game than I do. So I guess they say there's the other thing I saw mentioned they're talking about here in the article is this death mechanic. It seems like you can get 3 choices to do when you die, or 4, I guess, or 3. I guess it's 3. So basically, you can choose to go out in a blaze of glory. Just you do something and you get an automatic critical success on their final action. So your guy has been pummeled, but he's going to stand up and do one last thing, and then going to keel over dead. They can lose one of their hope slots, which you can get hope points, and then you put them in a slot. I don't know where hope slots are here. Is that it up here? I don't know if these are hope slots or maybe that's for leveling. I'm not sure. Did we see hope slots somewhere else? That's wealth. 2d10. I don't know where hope is. I should be somewhere pretty prominently, I would have thought, but I don't know. I don't know where hope is. Maybe it's down there somewhere. I don't know. Wealth, inventory, armor, weapon. Oh, it is. Oh, gosh, I scrolled right by it. Oop. Yep, thank you. No, sorry, I missed it. Okay. Hopes right here. So you get a couple of hope slots. You have these hope slots. And I guess I don't know how you get hope, but you would fill these in, and I guess you could spend hope to do things if you want as your second option. First option, go out in a blaze of glory, just do something, and you're going to crit succeed, but you're going to die. Then second is you can get scarred, and by getting a scar, you lose permanently. You lose one of these hope slots, but you're back. And then the third one, I think, is you can just roll a die. Or you do that same kind of roll. You roll all your hope and fear dice and let the dice determine their fate. I see. So I guess you can roll. And when they say all your hope and fear dice, maybe for every hope point you have, you can roll a die. I don't know how much. There's not a marker. It doesn't look like you're tracking fear anywhere. So I don't know how that works exactly. Let's say all yours, but presumably you're rolling you're rolling dice, but you roll fear versus hope, and whoever either adding dice together, but it is multiple dice. I'm not sure. But if hope wins, you're back. If fear wins, you die. So you can just kind of cool. I will say that's kind of nice. You could just randomly, you can put your fate in the dice if you want. You can just let your guy do something super cool and then just die, or you can kind of take a scar and kind of hinder yourself going forward because you have less hope than folks who haven't died at all. But you can do that too. Let's see if there's anything else interesting from here. Let's see. So this person says, and who is this person who got to sit through this demo? Just to be clear, it is Christian Hoffer. So I just want to give credit where credit is due for this information. So the one thing is on the kind of story-ish game, it says that making the GM and players equal partners in the storytelling seems to be essential ethos in Daggerheart. So yeah, I feel like that's definitely, it makes sense given everything. Let's see. And then he says there's also room for something akin to Dungeon World, where the game is much more freeform and concerned with letting the world grow as the story moves. While I think this kind of collaborative world building can occasionally result in Mad Libs kind of shenanigans, a good party of players who are aligned in what kinds of stories they want to tell will find this narrative structure much more engaging from the get-out. A world that the players help build from the onset is a world where there's no needed buy-in from players to make the game a success. Daggerheart, you want to say Dragonheart. Daggerheart understands that and seems to actively encourage it. I'm kind of two minds of that. I know a lot of people like that. I don't always love it as a player or as a GM, I guess. As a player, sometimes I really want to experience the world that's there. I don't want to be making it up as I go along. I think I think for me, here's what it is. I do enjoy, as a GM, I take a lot of pleasure and joy in creating making up the world as we go along and creating it. And I think because I get that fix when I'm GMing, when I'm playing, I don't want that particular fix. Maybe if I was always playing and never GMing, then having some sort of shared responsibility, some of that kind of GM stuff sort of folding in on players or emerging, melding of those two things would seem more appealing to me, because it's like, oh, great, I get to take part in this thing that I traditionally don't get to take part in. And I'm not a GM, so I don't have my own thing to get on and do it. And I get to do that. Great, great, great. But me, since I already have an outlet for that, I don't feel like I need one. And I'm always kind of, it's kind of like when I go to I don't know, a restaurant or something, and I want to be like, well, what do you guys do? Like, what do you have to offer? Like, what do you have to offer, as opposed to trying to dictate to the restaurant what to serve for dinner? I kind of be like, hey, show me, what's your special? Let me see your specials. And so I kind of feel that way when I'm playing in a game. I'm not particularly interested in creating it as I go. As a player, I do it all the time as a GM. I rely on that all the time as a GM, but as a player, not so much. But I can absolutely admit that I might be in the minority there in terms of what I want out of the game. And certainly, yeah, if I help make the world, then I am probably going to have more buy-in. So I acknowledge that that's totally, I would think, makes absolute sense. It's just not something that, as a player, that I'm usually hankering for. Lady of Pain says, games for the last 50 years generate narrative tools. It is time to evolve the game for the future, and that takes a player-driven story. Well, I think there are many ways to have player-driven stories. Hey, Max Mustard, thanks for joining. Have a great afternoon, evening, whenever. I think there are different ways to have player-driven stories. One can be that the players are actually taking part in constructing the fabric of the world. Certainly, that's one option. In my case, I run a very open, sandboxy. Well, one, so what I've done in the past is, that session 0 or campaign pitch is I really go to the players and say, well, what kind of game do you want to play? You guys want to be pirates in the high seas? You want to be nomads in the desert? You want to be Robin Hood as merry men? You want to, whatever it is, combination. You want to be Robin Hood as merry men on pirate ships in the desert? Whatever it is. And then I ask them also kind of, well, what kind of characters do you want to play? And I take all that and I mull it over in my brain and I try to put together something. And then once the game starts, and I look, and I will, if the players say like, hey, I want to be from another continent and I washed up on the shore of this strange land, I might ask them some stuff about it because I really don't have anything. So I'm happy to go like, oh, I don't know anything about another continent. So, tell me more if you have it. But I don't really put pressure or onus on them to fill it in unless they've got something. And then once the game starts, my game is very sandboxy, oriented to what the players want to do. So I'm always asking and always prompting the players for, what do you guys want to do? How do you guys want to make your way in the world? Both on a macro level of, what do you see as your end game? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to form a domain at some point? Are you trying to become a king, get some kind of little lordship for yourself? Are you trying to become a master wizard? Like, what are you trying to do? And then on a micro level, from game to game, like, okay, well, what are we doing? What are the things that we're doing that hopefully in the long run will lead to your goals? And then, of course, once the world starts to reply to their actions in kind, then that moves along. And there's obviously all kinds of different combinations of those two things. And I'm sure there's even third ways that I'm not doing. No, Sorian says, personally remember in AD&D, they didn't know much about the game worlds, and players were so invested that it was what mostly drove the narrative and changed the game world. Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't think you have to be, I know that in playing, when I played in a long running sci-fi game, I was so late to that game. These guys have been playing together in different combinations since they were in high school, and I met them much later. So the world, in terms of everything else, was set way before I showed up. But once I figured out how the world worked, it didn't stop me from becoming invested in it. I think that, different strokes for different folks. I have no doubt, though, that investments for some folks is at least helped by doing that. But like I said, not really for me. I almost would feel more pressure that I don't want. Because if someone said, well, what is this town like? You say you're from the town of Smessex. What is the town of Smessex like? And suddenly for me, I'm thinking about, well, how does this fit in with the rest of the world? Well, I got to know what's next to Smessex, and how does, I'm thinking about all these world building stuff that makes what seemed to be the simple question of, well, what's going on in Smessex really difficult, because I want it to blend in with the rest of the world. I don't want to be creating something and that's totally foreign to the way the world works. That's just me. I want something that fits. Now the GM might be thinking like, hey, it doesn't matter if doesn't fit or not. I'll make it work. But that's where I get it. Whereas I'm happy to look at the map and someone says, oh, what's this town of Smessex like? And the GM tells me something about it. I'm like, oh, I like that. I'm going to be from Smessex. Lady of Pen says that they view traditional story structure separate from RPGs. Tabletop RPGs can use that as story scaffolding, and the players select, as you're saying, but traditional story structure conflicts in RPGs. I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to take your word for it. I really haven't thought about it. We're talking story structure like Hero's Journey type story structure, 3-act or 5-act, or however you want to slice and dice it up. I mean, it can. I think folks have made games that do a pretty good job mimicking those sorts of structures. I'm trying to think what, I think, well, really the Powered by the Apocalypse ones are always those bunch of ones that go for like Monster of the Week and things that really try to mimic a particular genre and treatment of that genre, like X-Files or something similar. I haven't played them. I haven't played Monster Hearts. I read it ages ago, so I don't know. So I don't know. I think that I don't ever try to force a structure in there. Like I think a lot of that stuff, when people are talking about RPGs, their games in story terms, I'm not a huge fan of, because I feel like oftentimes you start to force things to fit, which maybe is to what goes with Lady in Pain is like, oh, I'm going to do these things for pacing. It's like, I'm not worried about the pacing. If they were about to go into a big fight or something, it makes a natural cliffhanger and we're running low on time. Yeah, in the game, that's pacing. But I'm not too concerned about that, because I'm not trying to. Pacing to me is you really need to try to control how much of everything they're doing, and I don't want to do that. I mean, obviously, I don't want to sit necessarily for hours while they're staring at a blank wall, frustrated. But at the same time, if they're having fun in a moment, I'm not going to cut it short because pacing. I'm going to let it breathe. I'm going to let it breathe. So, but there's all kinds of different games and different stuff. Hey, Kian or Kayan, I'm sorry if I am totally butchering your name. First time you caught the stream. Well, welcome. Oh, appreciate you watching the hex crawl stuff. Oh, great. I'm glad it's been useful to you. Your current goal is to create a 90 by 90 mile map with 2-mile hexes. So how many miles is that? So that's a lot of 90 by 90-ish mile map with 2-mile hexes. Are you going to have something in every hex of your map? Because that's a lot. It seems like a lot of hexes. I don't know what that would be. Was that 45 by 45? Seems like a lot. Lady of Pain says the character arc can evolve by the player at their pace. Character arc drives story. Yeah, I mean that is totally accurate. I don't really worry. I guess I don't worry about that stuff. Well, I'm not playing that kind of game. I'm playing BX and stuff where the character kind of emerges through game mostly, right? It's kind of what you do. Your characters are what they do, basically. We're not, in my game, we're not creating characters with pre-existing. I mean, they're free to. I guess I just don't put no structure on having pre-existing. What's the word I'm looking for? Inner conflicts or things like that, or inner tensions, or things they're trying to overcome. Right? They don't come into the game with some kind of inner need or want that they need to fulfill, or obstacle that they need to overcome. But I could totally see a game, and I think Burning Wheel and some other games like that do a much better job of trying to go more inside out, which is what, in stories, what you're really trying to do, right? Is you're having, for not always, but for the most part, the external story is mirroring the stuff that the character is going on internally. Whereas in kind of OSR games, it's that reverse. You kind of, as you're playing, you might pick up these internal conflicts. But it starts from the outside in, at least in terms of mechanics and things, because the game doesn't really ask you to task a character with having character-driven stuff at the start. He says they think 2 mile hexes makes keeping track of travel for the party movement through terrain more easily for D&D 3.5. Whoo, 3.5. Well, it's been a long time since I've played 3.5. So I'll take your word for it. I just read somebody, though it wasn't even a new article, extolling 3 mile hexes, and they had some good things to say about 3 mile hexes, which made sense. But I don't know in terms of 3.5, because I am so far removed from how it works. That works mechanically. So I've got no idea if 2 miles, but that's a lot of hexes. So just beware. Don't get burned down on all those hexes. 3 miles, it converts to kilometers. So what's 3 miles in kilometers? Like 5 kilometers? Would that be something like that? 3 miles is 5 kilometers? Something. Kane says they're caught between being a 5e zoomer and a not quite a grognard, not quite a 5e guy. I hear you. I told you. I played a few years in 3rd and 3.5. It was fun. The nice thing with 3rd is when it was really, and maybe I don't remember for a second so much. I'm sure it was kind of there, but that was when there's online. The internet was becoming a thing, at least when I was getting into it, which might have been later in the 3rd cycle when I started playing it consistently, because I know I ran a couple of kind of one shots of something in 3rd, but it wasn't until late towards the end of the cycle where I was getting it 3rd and 3.5. It might have already been 3.5. I know I played both, but I'm trying to remember which. And anyway, I remember being able to find online. It was like, oh, there's online resources for things like character builders and all this kind of neat stuff, which totally helped me out. All right, folks. Well, appreciate everybody kind of hanging in there. I'll probably rename this stream about why do I keep wanting to say Dragonheart? Daggerheart. So if you're interested in just my take on Daggerheart and a couple things, you can go to the front of the stream. I need to go pick up my daughter from summer campy thingamajig. And then just to remind folks, I'll be on the road the rest of the week, pretty much. I'll be in Texas, and I'll be literally on the road. So I might do some traveloggy stuff, but other than that, I'll probably post updates, but no streams for the foreseeable future into next week, probably, and beyond, because I'm also going on another trip. He said that it's very customizable character-wise, sometimes a fault. Yeah, it is definitely sometimes to a fault. Absolutely. And I hear you. A lot of people like 3rd. Paizo built their whole thing off of continuing 3.5e support. So I totally get it. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's not my cup of tea, especially these days, but I certainly had fun with it at the time, All right, folks, I will keep updating things. Look in the community tab, or go to the forums, or go to the Lemmy, or if you follow me on any of the social medias, I will be posting updates, but it's going to be quiet here for a while. Kind of until the end of the month, or this very, very spotty. So have a great rest of your August. I will update when I can. Wish me luck on driving up the lonely roads from Texas to New York solo. Game on, and I will talk to you later. Bye now.